Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very pleased to be with you today. The mists hung low over Port Melbourne on the 10th of August 1948, and the good ship Asturias, with its load of migrants, steamed into Port Melbourne. It was a wonderful time for me as a teenager. I had memories. It was a 5-week voyage, taking into account Gibraltar, Malta, Suez Canal, Aden, Colombo, Fremantle, and Melbourne, of course. And I had plenty of time on the boat to think of my past in England and to be excited about my future in Australia. What memories did I have? The air raids in the war, 1940-41, continuously happening. The siren would go, and 2 or 3 hours later, the siren would go again, a different noise, but we knew that the raid was over. A bomb dropped on the house across the road from us, wrecked the house. The people inside were injured, but they were not killed. Can you imagine? Hiroshima and Japan, 5 years later, with all the devastation and the killings of the atomic bomb. So I started my life and my memories. I went back and I thought, where do I go from here? The government made its decision. We were evacuated to Wales. My mother came with me and went to a little place called Lanfair Corallian, just opposite Shrewsbury on the border of Wales and England, as you know very, very well. And I stayed there for probably 6 months and then off to Worcester. But I must say this, the Welsh people impressed me. We used to go into the shops and they'd be speaking away and they'd see us come in and they'd speak in English. And I thought, what a wonderful thing. They made us so welcome. I had very little education formally until grade 3. My mother had a lady, Mrs. Allen. She's a retired principal and a primary school teacher, and she used to take £1 a week for people, and she had a small group of young people, about 6 of us, that she coached and taught. She did a wonderful job. I started primary school at grade 3 and enjoyed my time there. Then we had the 11 Plus, which was a government institution that was introduced in 1944, and the top 15% of the 11 Plus examination, all grade 6 did that, went off to grammar schools. I was lucky enough to win a place at Solihull Grammar on a scholarship, and I thought at that stage, you look upwards, you look at the seniors, the sixth formers, and some of them were going to London University, some, a few going to Oxford and Cambridge. I thought that's where I'd like to be. However, I'm back in Melbourne now. So Solihull School, my school in England, was a wonderful school. It used to say, when Richard II was ruling this land in days which are long passed away. Now, I'm not sure where Richard II fits into the chronology of English monarchs, but that's where it was. So after that, I went to Melbourne High School. Wonderful school, academic rigour, music, sport, and Brigadier General Langley was a wonderful man. I learned about P.J. Patterson, Lawson and C.J. Dennis. I was in service. This young boy learned a lot about Australia and Australians. Sadly, we didn't mention the Indigenous people in those days. Bill Woodfull was deputy. Bill was captain of the Australian cricket team in the 30s in the bodyline series. So he used to amaze me. He did not go anywhere near cricket. You know what? I think he came back later to be principal of Melbourne High School. So I had a wonderful time there, and I often think, because Solihull and because Melbourne were so good to me, that's why I wanted to become a teacher. And so I left Melbourne High School in '52, started at Melbourne University in '53. 7,000 people, all up. A very small situation. And I did 3 major studies: geography, with geology 1 as part of the geography major, history, German, and single subjects in English and philosophy. It's a wonderful time. I managed to get a job as a law clerk in the lands department, endorsing titles. We had probate, letters of administration, transfer, mortgage, lease, caveats. It was a wonderful legal background for me to have, and I found that they looked after me. I worked when I could, so it was part-time. Exams came around, off I went to do the exams, then I'd come back and so forth. And I found time to do other things at Melbourne University. I was captain and secretary of the Melbourne University Soccer Club, and the highlight of my involvement with that was in 1957 when I got my blues tie and was part of the Australian Universities combined team. So I was very proud to be part of that. Well, where do we go from here? Teaching bursaries, yes. Bursaries to teach, yes. And that's how I applied and got one. It wasn't very easy. It wasn't easy to do that, but at that stage there was a shortage of teachers, desperate shortage. So £8 a week. Now you might think, £8 a week, basic wage, £13–14 a week. So £8 a week was a pretty good, and you had to teach for 3 years. How many young people would like to be bonded to teach or to work for a number of years after getting a position today with the uncertainty in employment? So off I went, and they posted me as an English teacher to Essendon Technical School in 1958. And Jim Doherty was my head of department. Fantastic, Lancastrian, and bemoaned the 30s when there was no promotion at all. And he was class 2 head of department. And he said, after the inspection in April, 2 months into the inspection, he said, "David, you've made a great start." I said, "Oh, good." He said, "If you keep this up, you'll have a promotable mark at the end of the year." This is in my first year of teaching. So I kept it up, did my best, and so forth. And then 1959 came around. I was still at Essendon Technical School. InterVarsity. I suppose many of you have been to InterVarsity and so forth. Great time. Department knocked me back. They wouldn't let me leave without pay. So I appealed, as you would, wouldn't you? And the Director General saw me, Ramsey, and he said, "Mr. Lee, what's the grounds for your appeal?" And I said, "Well, I have heard some friends of mine in hockey and football, they have leave to go to InterVarsity." And he said, "Yeah, you're right, you can go." Well, that's the good part of the story. The bad part follows. I went to InterVarsity in Sydney, had a horrendous broken leg. They had to stop the game. They couldn't move me. I was 6 months in plaster and 12 months rehabilitation. I often wonder, why didn't he say no? So there I was, and I was transferred from Essendon to Aspendale Technical School, and that was the foundation year. And then the jobs came up for promotion to Class 3. And as you know, many of you probably are teachers, that Class 4, Class 3, Class 2, Class 1, special class. If you wanted to be a principal, you had to climb all the names in the ladder. So the jobs came out. There was one for Mordialloc High School and one for Aspendale Tech. Well, I'd had such a good time in the techs, I stayed in the techs. So I got my Class 3 job in 1960 at Aspendale Technical School. So I thought, I really don't want to go through another 12 months with a broken leg, so I stopped playing soccer. But I'd always wanted to found a football team, soccer team. So I spoke to Reg Hanslow, the principal, and I said, Reg, can you give me some ground at the back of the shops, the practical shops, and can I put some goalposts up? He said, yes, you can. We had, in 1960, under 12s, under 14s, under 16s, under 18s, and we were not without success. The under 14s were runners-up in the Cup for 1960. In 1961, much to my joy, the under 16s were undefeated champions. And then we had 8 boys that represented Victoria. Well, time had come and 3 years had passed, and I was applying for Class 2 jobs. And there was a job at White Hills. Well, I was off for a couple of days, came back, and they said, congratulations, David, you've got the Class 2 job at White Hills. And I said, oh, that's good. It'll take me an extra half an hour up Warrigal Road to Surrey Hills. They said, no, it'll take you longer than that. It's in Bendigo. So, White Hills, I went there in 63, had 3 wonderful years. I hadn't left home. I was at home until I was 27 because my parents enjoyed me and I enjoyed them. So Bendigo has a long-standing situation with me. Anyway, I transferred back to Melbourne, to Noble Park, and then the Class 1 jobs came up. Fortunate. I applied, and in those days, the Class 1 English jobs were going to people 6, 7, 8, 9 years in Class 2. It was very slow then, and it was been a bit of a bottleneck. So I thought, well, I'll go anywhere, any consequential vacancy in the state. Well, I'm walking along the corridors at Noble Park, and the registrar rushed up to me and she said, you've got promotion. I said, no, you're wrong. It can't be. I'm only 5 years in Class 2. She said, no, here it is. And Harry Ross, the head of English at Lawn Technical School, had transferred back to Ballarat to be with his wife. He had 3 years there, living away from home. And I got that. So consequentially, I was at Geelong. And then 2 years later, I got a vice principal's job there and carried on to be vice principal at Doveton North and Bendigo and Ballarat. So my hero in those days was Ted Jackson, and I did a thesis about the demise of inspection and the emergence of the school review. And we had, as you remember, the old inspection. It was a disastrous day, and the kids were worried too. I had one student, after one inspection that I had, he said, did we do all right for you, sir? They knew. Not only was the blackboard beautifully set up, not only were you way ahead with your lesson preparation, but and the VTU, Victorian Teachers Union, in which the Technical Schools Union was amalgamated for quite a long time, made very little impression there. But Ted Jackson, who was Director of Technical Education from 68 to 76, he decided, and rightly so, and the new formed Technical Teachers Association of Victoria, that teachers were professional people and they should be treated as professional people, and any measurement or any advice should come from within the school through the principals and the head of department. Well, wonderful, wonderful. Ted had 8 years. Sadly, he passed on fairly young. But this situation then meant that school-based committees appointed principals and vice principals. And within the school, the Special Duties Association elected committee by teachers within the school appointed heads of department. And we were very much better off with that. I got my principal position in 74 at the age of 38, so I was very pleased, because Jim Doherty had said to me, if you don't make it by the time you get to 40, David, you won't make it. So I just made it. So by the end of the 70s, I had a relieving job as principal, which was a wonderful, wonderful job, because I went to over 12 schools and I learned so much about education, about running of schools and so forth. The public was losing confidence by the end of the 70s. No inspection. What about the standards? What's happening to the standards? And so when I was appointed by a school-based committee to be principal of Blackburn in 1980, I attended a Scotch college in service on the review for schools. And I came away with the feeling that we should have a school review at Blackburn. It took me 2 years to convince staff that they should have a school review. Why? The fear of inspection again. So we had an in-service at Warburton, and it worked the trick. The school voted unanimously to have a school review. And so we decided to, we wrote up in various areas. There might be welfare, might be the education committee, might be finance, might be council, whatever. Wrote up our reports and had an external review committee. Alan Gregory, who was at Monash University Education, Alan, and also across the way in one of the colleges at one stage. He was one of the people who was involved. And there were Anne Costello, famous name. She was a welfare person, and a wonderful person. She came in there, so they wrote up the review. Now, the administration. We were part of the school review. The school wanted to review the function of the principal and the vice principal, not the staff. So the whole situation had tiptoed over. They gave me a good report, I might add, so that was pleasing. But the situation was that now schools were to be reviewed by external panels, and progress was made. The saddest part for me was the closing of the technical schools. Today I can tell you that the 10 new technical schools that the present government are introducing are linked to universities and TAFE colleges, and the students go to normal schools, and they will then do maybe a day or half a day here and there in the technical schools where they will learn trades and other technical schools. So that's good. So I guess really the situation is that the technical schools that I administered and the technical schools today are vastly different things. And I think that that's the way to go It means that the students get the benefit of a 6-year course of studies, and they can branch out and do TAFE studies and technical studies when they want to. Geelong, Ballarat, Bendigo, Morwell are country sites for those, and there are other places around Melbourne. The interesting thing about the collapse of technical schools and the situation in Melbourne is that now Paran is looking to have a new high school. It's very hard though to realise what the drift of population will be in terms of where people will be. So all the inner suburban schools are virtually gone, and now with places like Docklands, where are we going to fit them? So that's a problem, I think, for education. But in 1983, I suddenly got this beamer bonnet. I thought, David, you've been to over 20 schools. You've got a good idea educationally what makes a good school. Perhaps we should go into politics and help to make the state system a better system. So I pre-selected for Sandringham and door-knocked the whole electorate, 15,000 homes, factories and shops in 2 years. Outside school time and at weekends, and never in the dark. There's nothing worse than someone knocks on your house and I know in the dark it can be very intimidating. Well, yep, only 24 doors slammed in my face in that situation. So at this stage, the Labor Party held the Sandringham seat. You probably think, oh, that's, yeah, why? Well, in 1982, the Liberals got absolutely slammed. They lost seats everywhere, and they lost Sandringham. And Lindsay Thompson was Premier. It wasn't his fault. He had a distinguished career in education, and it was a fitting reward for his contribution to politics that he became Premier in 1981-2 when Hamer retired. Well, yes, and guess who followed me? Murray Thompson, Lindsay's son. And Murray has done an absolutely fantastic job. He really has. He's done a really wonderful job. I can't believe it's 26 years since I retired, and he's retiring at the end of I think it's common knowledge, at the end of this term. So he's done a wonderful, wonderful job. And so anyway, pre-selection. I'm presenting, and Jeff Kennett was on the panel, and I presented there. My wife, who sadly died 5 years ago, she said to me, "What are you doing tonight?" I said, "I'm going to pre-selection for politics." She said, "Oh, well, good luck," not realising what she'd said. Anyway, I'm talking away, and Jeff turned to me at one stage and he said, "Mr. Lee, can you give short answers?" And I said, well, yeah, I'll try. Anyway, I had pre-selection, and then my budget, they thought, you're spending far too much on your budget. You've got name tags on the back of cars, and you've got how to vote. $6,000 was the budget in those days. And I can remember when I went for my second time, it was $9,000, and they thought I'd spent far too much in that situation. So the second time, after having won the seat, the second time was a situation where 4 people contested against me. And I think they thought he's new, he's not well known, and he's also now got a good seat. It'd be nice to take it off him. In some ways, pre-selection is harder than election. And it really is, and with the last troubles we've had in the last week or so, I think that's a pretty good indication of that. Anyway, off I went to Parliament, and I must confess that I had never been to the Victorian Parliament. Here I was, elected member. One of the older fellas, Dick Long, said, "David, welcome. Let me show you the house." So here we go, and he said, "Now, opposition, government, opposition. Here, my son, the enemy." Well, I thought about this. I thought, what does he mean? Enemy? Aren't they on my side? And you know what? The problem with politics today is not just the personalities, it's that we are competing for the same job.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. And I just...
Can't agree more. Yes.
Oh, so I saw him.
Did you break that?
Let's, do I dare answer that? So there was a situation where I come into this, and suddenly everybody wants to be a minister, everybody wants to be deputy prime minister or premier or whatever, and we're all competing. We're all competing for the same thing. People don't realise this. When I was a teacher, 4, 3, 2, 1, special class. There was a ladder to climb. I'm not doing too well here. A ladder to climb, and you set about climbing it. That's where you wanted to be. That's where you wanted to go. Well, it wasn't all bad. I never got over the politics of politics. My word. That's a desperately difficult situation to find yourself in. But I think I did some valuable work. I was on the Finance Committee, the Housing Committee, Consumer Affairs, Agriculture, I don't know why, I'm not a gardener, and of course Chair of Education. I soon realised now that even though I had the knowledge, the other people had the position. And there were 3 or 4 shadow education ministers whilst I was there, and I served them nobly, but I realised that because I hadn't been to a private school,